Hey, Jason here, and one thing y'all know you can count on me for is significant coverage of budget tech items. That's camera gear, mics, earbuds, decor, but also how could you forget phones? That's the topic of today's video, where I'm not reviewing phones I got in person, but rounding up phones I got from scouring the internet that based on their design, specs, and features seem to be excellent value for money. The price point for this video is not under, but around $100. The most expensive phone on the list is $134, so let's get into things. The first phone to grace this list is an off-brand Android phone sitting at $109. Now, this is $109 on Banggood, a not particularly well-known but reputable Chinese retailer, and I'll talk about that more in a sec. But the Oukitel C21, the main thing to focus on here is the Helio P60 that powers this guy. Budget Android phones typically have MediaTek chips, and phones around $100 have stuck to the older Helio P23 for a couple generations. The phones in my last two best phone at $100 videos had this chipset, so it's good to see the Oukitel C21 in this list with the newer chip that's quote 70% higher performance. Other important points, it's got a 6.4-inch Full HD Plus IPS screen that I can say will look great, 4 gigs of RAM, a solid battery capacity at 4000 mAh, Android 10, and what looks like a decent but also kind of plasticky design. Comes with a silicone case though, which is nice. My main concern here is just that the main camera's aperture spec isn't the greatest. I can pretty confidently say that out of all the phones on this list, this will have the worst camera in the roundup. Next, there's the Redmi Note 9 sitting at $134 on Amazon. Now, while this is definitely a cheap phone, this is also definitely not a budget phone because Xiaomi, despite having a low profile in the US, sells more phones than Apple worldwide. With the Note 9, this means things are going to be more polished from the get-go with a higher likelihood of software updates, and some features stand out a ton because of how good the integration is. As someone that's had both a Redmi Note and many budget off-brand Android phones, I can say confidently that the camera on the Note will edge up to the quality of stuff like my Pixel, and video will be especially good for the price. I found this travel video shot on the Note 9, I'll link it below, and honestly, it blew my mind. This particular model on Amazon has a 6.5-inch Full HD Plus IPS screen that's going to be great, slightly less RAM than the previous option at 3 gigs, more than enough battery capacity at 5020 mAh, Android 10, and a workable plastic build. Its main selling points are the polish due to being Xiaomi, the Helio G85, which is a chip that's not too different from, but supposedly a little bit better than the P60, and an impressive camera system that includes that 48 megapixel f1.8 main. Next on the list is the Umidigi A9 Pro, kind of the resident rock star of my budget phone reviews. It just so happened that different generations of this model of Umidigi phones ended up being my top picks at $100 for both 2019 and 2020. Right now is the highest price I've seen for an Umidigi A Pro model phone at $125, but there's no arguing, this is still a steal at this price. Now, between the A5 and A7, there honestly wasn't too much of an upgrade besides better camera quality, USB-C, new colors, and a fingerprint reader that somehow got worse. However, I'm glad to say the A9 Pro now has the Helio P60, just like the first phone on this list. Actually, the power of these two phones seems to be very comparable, in addition to a lot of other stuff, like the screens, both Full HD Plus, just about the same size, same amount of RAM, and Android 10. The main differences that make sense for the A9 Pro to be more expensive though are the camera, which I'd predict is pretty similar to the A7 Pro from last year, and better than the Oukitel C21. There's also a slightly larger battery at 4150 mAh, and judging from past A Pro series phones, the build is going to be top notch at the price. The first and third options I just laid out for y'all were both from Banggood.com, and while I can't endorse why they picked this name, I can vouch for their credibility. They're a legitimate retailer, you will get your phone within several weeks of ordering, and you do save money buying Chinese phones from this Chinese retailer. I bought 3 phones from them with no problems at all not sponsored in any way, so I'm just letting you know this is a legitimate place to buy these cheap phones. So now I want to talk about phones at $100 that are at that price point, not because they're released recently and designed to be cheap, but because they're flagships that depreciated in value. So the first phone on this list is the Pixel 3, which you can get for only $100 used in good condition. Used phones from eBay have really shown themselves to be a great deal to me recently because of listings like this, where the seller has a bunch of phones of varying models and conditions, and they're all competitively priced. So first off, with listings like this, expect to get the phone with a bit of wear and tear as is stated, without the original box, accessories, and likely without even a charger. However, with all that in mind, and looking past the fact that the design of the Pixel 3 is probably a bit dull compared to the other phones on this list so far, it'll still feel crazy snappy, polished, with an excellent camera on the front and back, even in 2021. Honestly, the day-to-day smoothness with the Pixel 3 is gonna be way better than the new budget phones on this list, no doubt at all, just as a consequence of being a past flagship that's now older and used. It's also been funny rewatching some of the coverage of this phone and seeing people go on and on about the 4 gigs of RAM and the notch and the headphone jack being gone. Being honest, all of those are non-issues. They're way more legitimate concerns back then, but now at $100, this Pixel is a good look. In the same category of flagship phones that are now older, used, and cheaper, there's the OnePlus 6 for only $110 on this eBay listing. For just a tad more than the Pixel, you get a bigger 6.2-inch screen that's similarly 1080p Plus and AMOLED, 2 gigs more RAM, and a headphone jack. It's not all better though, as Pixels do get better future support, and as of right now, there's no update above Android 10 with the OnePlus 6. The Pixel stereo speakers are also better, and the camera on the back of the OnePlus is probably just a tad worse because of the lack of Google software. Front camera won't compare at all, as the Pixel will most definitely beat out the OnePlus. But beyond all that, this is a crazy good deal at $110. Performance will be snappy as all get out, as we got the same chip as the Pixel here, just clocked a little bit faster. There's more than enough RAM, and the OnePlus 6 really did have a great build for its time. Last but not least, in the world of grown-up flagships, there's the Galaxy S8 at $130. Just like the previous two phones, expect no accessories or original packaging, and literally just the slightly weared and teared phone in bubble wrap. The main selling point today though, with this phone, is Samsung's push to go all out. That's still evident in 2021. That's a bar Google always seems to just barely miss, and OnePlus decides to miss to cut their prices. So the Galaxy S8 has a glass build without a notch that holds a 5.8-inch Quad HD Plus AMOLED screen, performance that'll still be great in 2021, good cameras on both the front and back, and Samsung's typical over-the-stuff like a heart rate monitor and an iris scanner. But really, the reason I put this $130 Galaxy S8 next to the Pixel 3 and the OnePlus 6 at $100 and $110 respectively is just to offer y'all a premium phone that's still insanely cheap. Of course, being an older phone than the other two devices means this has an older Snapdragon chipset. Android 9 is where the updates bottom out for now, but unlike the other two, at one point in time, this was the best Android phone you could buy. So that was the third option in the used flagships category, and I do want to say I've really tried with this section to find the best listings for these used phones. You can find the S8, for example, at $100 or less with screen burn-in, but I just consider burn-in to be different than cosmetics, so I made sure none of the selections for any of the listings that I showed had that. Additionally, the 3 new in age and condition phones that I showed y'all are from reputable retailers, whether it's Banggood or Amazon, and come with all the original accessories brand new. Talking about the phones as I round out this video, make sure to check the carrier compatibility so you can use this phone with the carrier you're currently with. And also keep an eye out for the phones that are dual SIM, as I know a lot of US carriers are dumb and just don't support that at all. Besides that, thanks for being here for this video. Hopefully it helped you out. Please consider subscribing. Again, all the links are down below to the phones if you're interested in picking those up. I also did do a $150 iPhone unboxing, so if you're on the Apple side of the aisle, feel free to check that out right there. But I'll see you in the next one. What did I write in my script here? Oh.